start in a minute, or I'll give us another minute or two. Maybe it takes a minute for it to listen like before. So let me just, I know it's not time to go yet, but I'm going to try to find a problem that encompasses most all of this. Let's see. If I find one that has a bunch of angles all together, there's two. I may have to end up working two problems instead of just one, because I really don't see. Well, I guess in this section, this is before the position vector, so maybe I can just do one. One that has, maybe that one. In the coordinate direction. Wait. F1. Oh, okay, that deals with both this and that. Determine the magnitude and coordinate direction. Acting F3. Where's F3? So the resultant of the 3/4 axis on the positive one. Oh, okay. Okay, so I'll solve that one. That may cover everything I need. So I don't know that there's any particular reason to wait anymore. I guess I could just start going ahead. He has two questions on this. Oops, yep. And what I'll do is grab both, because you got to do both of these kind of eventually anyway. So he has one question that says that. Then what he's got another question that's down here that says this. Okay, so go back here. I'll deal with each one differently, so I may move this box down when I get to this. So maybe I'll move it to the side. And he says, first thing he says, determine the coordinate directions, angles of F1. To help me, eventually, I'm going to shoot out this. Okay, I'll push the button. We have to wait a second. I think I pushed the button. Oh, there it is. There's this thing called Octave. Okay, now if I was on the main computer, I'd use MATLAB, but the main computer's not doing very well. So Octave, in case, have y'all ever heard of that? So if you don't want to pay for MATLAB, you can just go out. Hang on a second. Let me let this come up. Here. You may can go out and just say, just search Octave, Octave, and what you'll get first thing is that. Well, that's if you use Google. If you use the other search engine, I don't know what you're going to get. So with it, it's like, if you read it like just within a few seconds, you'll realize it's kind of, they may have actually removed some of the reference to MATLAB. Oh no, is largely, okay, so they did. The syntax is largely compatible with MATLAB. It's only when you get to the more advanced stuff that it becomes incompatible. So I use it in class, and you'll see why here shortly. Okay, so I've got, if I'm just focusing on F1, which is he tells me to focus on F1. So I'm going to focus only on F1 for the moment. I'm going to ignore this F2. Now, I will not be able to ignore it in the other problem. But if you look at this thing, you get a blue thing here. You get a darker blue thing here. So what this is that projection thing. So here you have a vector that's projected down here in the plane. So think of this as being the ground right here. Here's the ground. And the sunlight came in up here and projected a shadow of this on the ground. So on the ground, what is that vector? I don't know what else to call it, but I'm just going to say the length of it is equal to 300, because that's the length of this thing. And the length of that thing sweeps through that 60 degrees. And so it's cosine of 60 degrees. That is the length of that purple line laying on the ground, or the shadow, or the projection, whatever you want to call it. Okay, now you also got, you notice he has this line, right here, and he has this line back here. So in fact, you have a vector, that component going up right here, that in fact, it's 300 times the sine of 60 degrees. So why is that? Because this is a triangle, of course, and this side of the triangle is 306 sine of 60. Now, if you wanted to, you could copy that. Oops, wrong thing. You could do a copy there, and you can move that right over there, and they'd be both the same length. For me, I'm going to delete it. So this length is the same as that length. And so that's the length right there. The next thing you need to do is you need to find the length in this direction. Yeah, these things are kind of big here. You need to find the length in this direction. And believe it or not, you need to find the length back here, so that this is the square laying in the plane here. Well, you have to look real close, and it's kind of a confusing drawing, but he's telling you the angle between this and the plane and that is 45 degrees. Now, I know that the sine of 45 degrees is the same thing as the cosine of 45 degrees, and that's nothing more than 1 over square root of 2. So if I wanted to, at this point, I could pretty much write that F1 vector. I'm going to write it in a weird fashion. I'm going to first take the z component. So 300 sine of 60 times the k. That's the z component right there. Now I want to take this component. This component goes out in the y direction. But what is it? It's 300 cosine of 60 over square root of 2. Why is that? Okay, so first, that's the length of the projected vector in the plane right here. And then the 1 over square root of 2 comes from the fact that if I look down on this triangle right here, this is what I see. What I see is, okay, so now I'm looking down, I'm seeing X this way, I'm seeing Y this way. So what I'm doing is I'm sitting up here I am, and I'm looking straight down that axis. Actually, no, I'm sitting, my body is sitting like this. Here's my spine, here's my legs, here's my hands, but I'm looking down that axis. And my spine is lining up with the X direction. So this is me. Here I am, here's my spine. I'm looking down and seeing that. And what I see a vector that shoots out here in that plane that is 300 cosine of 60. So this shadow is in fact that purple vector. And it's 45 degrees. And of course it's 45 degrees here. So I'm looking for the component down here and the component here. So I'm looking at the component right there. And that's in the Y direction. I got a lot of confusion around this. So it's 300 cosine. And I could write it two ways. I could write it this way, cosine 45, which maybe I'll do that. And that's the J. So this component is right there. So I got to do this other one. Okay, it's got to go this way. So it's got to be minus 300 cosine 60. Why? Because that's the length of this thing right here. And then I could say sine of 45 I. Now, if I want to, I can go in here and do something interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this and just copy it, except the, maybe, here we go, F1 is equal to, give me a second, so 300 cosine of 60 sine of 45 I plus 300 cosine of 60 cosine of 45 J, and then plus that 300 sine of 60K. Now, this is the one I'm going to focus on for a minute. And what I'm going to do, try to keep it near the bottom of the page. So I can go ahead and start using MATLAB. Now, here's the cool thing about this is MATLAB was called MATLAB because MAT had to do with matrix, the M-A-T, not necessarily math. Although they changed they created the company, and the company's name is M-A-T-H Works, MathWorks. So anyway, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm going to say F1, and I'm going to put it in as a vector. And the vectors get put in like this, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, looks like that. Or I can put it in this way, where I can put a space in between them. And so it's a little bit of a MATLAB thing. So it looks the same way, except I didn't put a space right there. So there. The other way you can do it is if you don't want them as, you wanted them as rows instead of columns, you can do it that way. MATLAB doesn't care. It treats those two the same way as long as you're consistent. And meaning that if you put in F1 and it's a row, make sure you put in F2 as a row as well, and then you can add them together. So I'm going to put in F1 just as I'm going to put them in as a row. And the reason I'm putting them in as a row is because it's easier for me to show them on the screen. Because if I see these 1, 2, 3, it takes up one line versus this will take up 3. Takes up too much space on the screen. So I'm going to put it in like this. So first, minus 300. Actually, if you'll notice, 300 is common to each of these three terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 300 times this matrix, which is cosine degrees of 60. And I need to put a minus sign in front of it. times sine degree of 45. Now I want a new row. I want a new character. So this is associated. So what I've entered is associated with the x coordinate. Now I'm going to enter the one that's associated right here is going to be associated with the y, and then a space, and the one that's associated with the k, the j. The z coordinate. So I don't know whether to use a comma or a space. It really doesn't matter. You get the same result. But I'll do cosine degree 60 times cosine degree, that's what the d is, 45, comma, sine degree of 60. And then there's my vector. So I go, and it makes sense, I go minus 106 in the x, 106, positive 106, and 259. Now, here's what's so funny, okay? If I want to go back and find the length of this vector, there's a thing called the norm so inside MATLAB, it's got standard definitions of things that you would see in linear algebra. Norm is one of them. So standard norm, you can do, I think you can do, is it help norm? I think it may be something like that. There you go. So okay, I guess if I'm going to, so there are different ways of doing norms. Okay, I guess I have to use the little things to scroll up. Okay, so it says compute the p norm. If the second argument is not given, p is equal to 2, meaning it's the square root of the square. So what I can do is type, okay, so first of all, let me remember. Here's f1. Now I'm going to do the norm of f1. Anybody have an estimate of what it should equal? So think about what we did. We took a vector, we broke it into 3 coordinates. We have a coordinate along all 3 lines. Now we're going back and we're taking the square root of the sum of the squares. Wouldn't that be the length of the vector to begin with? So if I do that, what I get the length of the vector to begin with, 300. So that's not too terribly surprising. So then the next thing, what else can I do with this? Okay, well, that follows up with answering the question that he asked. He asked us to determine, determine the coordinate direction angles of F1. What's the procedure in doing that? Well, I have to find a unit vector pointing in the direction of F1. Wouldn't that be F1 over its own length? And this is a definition. So in fact, in MATLAB, it's going to be nothing more than F1 over the norm of F1. So if we go in here and do that, okay, so unit vector F1 is equal to F1 divided by the norm of F1, which is square root of the sum of the squares, and you get that. Any idea as to what the norm of this unit vector would be? Unit vector F1. What do you think that would be? So that's kind of like Who's Buried in Grant's Tomb. And no one came along and dug him up. So the unit vector has length of 1. That's the whole point of finding the unit vector. Now, once you do that, here's what's interesting. Okay, so I'm not on the right page, so I'm going to have to spin backwards some. Going back to the definition, which is not here, but it starts being right here. Okay, so take a look at this real close. Okay, the U is a unit vector pointing in the direction of the A. So any vector, I just happen to have mine called F1. He has his called A. what this is, it's kind of weird. He actually should have something like this. This should be a vector. It's hard to, so in fact, it's the vector over its own length. And so the unit vector is this, okay? But look at this. The unit vector is also that, because you compare it to the thing we did the other day, and you'll find, hey, wait a minute. So if I'm able to take this and do an inverse cosine, I can find that. In other words, alpha, let's see if I can write this okay, cosine inverse of ax over the magnitude of a, which is in fact, you take the inverse cosine of that, and you get the angle. You take the inverse cosine of that, and you get this angle. Take the inverse cosine of that, and you get that angle. So MATLAB can swap that out for you in a matter of seconds. Because what you can do is arc cosine degree of UF1 and outpots. Well, first of all, I don't know how that happened. Arc cosine degree. Okay. So just like that, you get the answers. 110.7 something, 69, and 30. Now, if we want, we can check this. I think we can check it. I have another page that, okay, first of all, I have to know what the problem is. I do not know, that's the wrong, do not remember the problem. I have to know the problem. Oh, no, wait, it's on the page right there. 266. So if you go to this thing, where did it go? There's the appendix. Oh gosh, there's a lot of stuff. Okay, let's just stop. This is fundamentals. I don't think this is a fundamental. I think this is just two. And they have these new ones that are called P's. Oh, and there's R's too. Good grief. Okay. 266. Oh, that is. Did I just push the wrong one? I did. I'm in the dynamics one. Sorry about that. I do not want to go there. I wanted to go there. And I wanted to go there. Okay. Me, I'm just going to guess that it's right there. Not far enough. So there you go, 266. So there's what he ended up with. So he ended up with 111, 69, and 30. If you look at octave, I guess you could argue that this actually could be 111 if you're rounding it. 69.3, I could argue that. And then 30, there's no reason to round. So you can see how you can use MATLAB to answer these questions pretty quickly. Okay. So that gives us that. So what we do is we find, what I like to do is I go in and do in MATLAB, a cosine, and get back the degree of the vector u, and I called it F1. It will give me back in the list alpha, beta, gamma, just like that. Now, we can also come in and write these. If you wanted to write them, if you feel more comfortable writing them by hand, then that's okay too. You would just go in and say UF1 would be minus 0.35 355I plus 0.35355J, and then plus 0.866K. And then what you would do is you would say alpha is equal to cosine inverse of that number. Then you would say beta is equal to cosine inverse of that number. And you would say gamma is equal to cosine inverse of that number, and that's okay. Me, instead of taking that extra time, I can just do it in MATLAB and be done. So if you want to do it by hand, you can put out each number. Maybe you want to do first one by hand and then do the others by MATLAB. It's up to you. Okay, so now that we've got that, he's wanting to know something else. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drag this down the page right here, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to copy the picture because I don't really want to mess up what I've got. And on this one, he says, determine the magnitude and the coordinate directions angles of F3 so that the resultant of three vectors acts along a positive y-axis and has a magnitude of 60. Okay, so we found out F1 was equal to, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to borrow the stuff from here, minus 106.07i plus 106.07j plus 259.81k. Now, where I'm getting it from is right here. And the reason I'm able to do that is because, if you look back, well, that was before I did the help on the norm. I essentially put in the F1 as those components that we had up there. So then the next question is I need to find F2, and then he wants to know F3, so that when I add them up, F1 plus F2 plus F3 is equal to force acts along the positive y direction, so it's J, and it's 600. So that's the equation you've got. So all I really need to do is find this, and then to find that, I need to come up with the equation that says F3 is equal to 600J, which you told me what that's going to be, minus F1 minus F2. And that's pretty much it. So this is the equation I got to solve, but I got to find this one next. So how do we find that one? Well, we're given the cosine direction angles right here. So if I look at this, F2 is going to be equal to 500, right? So it's 500 times cosine of alpha I plus cosine of beta j plus cosine of gamma k. Now, what are those angles? That is the alpha is the angle between the x-coordinate and the vector itself. The x-coordinate and the vector itself. So that's a 60. Okay. What is the angle between the j-coordinate and the vector itself? There's the vector itself. There's the j-coordinate or the y-coordinate. That's 45. And then the angle between the k and the F2, k goes this way, F2 goes that way. You told me it's 120. So I'm going to have to move this out, 120, k, and that. So I've got all those. So if you want to, I would go to MATLAB. Now here's something I've never tried before. I'm just going to try something. I don't know if this will work. Let's say if I did a cosine of, say, 1 and 2, and just said, would it break it into components? It does. I've never tried that before. So what I'm going to do in MATLAB, in order to get this, I'm going to do this. 500 cosine of a vector that looks like 60 in one location, 45, oh, that needs to be D, and 120. So that's the shortest way you could put that in MATLAB to do. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so that is called F2 is equal to, and it's 500 times cosine in degrees of a vector of angles, which is 60, 45, and 120. Close the vector, close the operation, and that's what I get. 250, 355, and minus 250. So I don't think I can remember that, so I think I'm going to have to bounce back and forth. So I'll fill this out now. Okay, so it was 250i plus 353.55j minus 250 and k. So bam, just like that, I got the F2. So guess what I can do now? Since I have F1 in the computer, I have F2. I need to come up with something to call this as a variable. I guess I could either do that, or I could put in a vector which looks like this: 0, 600, and a 0. That's the I component, that's the J component, that's the K component. So I might just do that. So now I'm going to come up and say, what is F3? Well, go back to MATLAB and you can say, okay, F3 is 0, 600, 0. That's the first component, minus F1 minus F2. Did I write that in right? Minus F1 minus F2. I did not actually put a name there. That should be F3. F3 is equal to that. So just like that, I got F3. Okay, I'm going to have to bounce back and forth. Minus 143.934i plus 140.3806j, and then minus 9.8076k. So that's the vector. I don't think he wants to know the vector. Okay, he wants to know the magnitude and the coordinate direction angle. He doesn't care about the vector itself. He wants to know the magnitude, and then he wants to know alpha, beta, and gamma. So again, there's our norm. So if I were willing to do this, this would come from norm of the F3. So let me see if I can do that. Norm of F3. 201.30. Now he probably will write 201, if even that. I may have gotten I could easily get the wrong answer. So okay, and wait, it looks like I did. Look at that. So he says it is that. Let's see if we can find out what we did wrong. Okay, so I got a norm of that. He got a norm of what? 428. So he says the answer should be 428. Now, let's diagnose what I did wrong. So we have F1, we have F2. We're okay with F1 because the F1 at least has a check on that. Now, the only other thing I could think of, is it possible that I put in the wrong thing there? Whoops, that's not where I want to go. I want to go to MATLAB. Let's go back and see what did I put in for, unless you've seen what I've done wrong. If you saw what I've done wrong, let me know. But in the meantime, I'll just keep using the arrow up key. Okay, 500 times cosine of 60. Let's make sure I got my angles correctly. Okay, F2 with X is 60. F2 with Y is 45. And F2 with that. So I think I've got my value for F2 in there correct. I can enter it again. It doesn't matter because I could have copied it wrong on the page. That's not going to matter because I didn't use what was on the page. I used what's on that one. The next question is, okay, determine the magnitude and coordinate direction angles of F3 so that the resultant of the three forces act along a positive and has a magnitude of 600. The positive y, I think we're good there. And so if you want to know F3, you bring over minus F1 minus F2. Did I actually do that? I did. So 143, 140, 90. There's no way the magnitude of that is going to be 420. But what I'm going to do momentarily is I'm going to go ahead and try to find my direction angles out of that. Okay, 600 minus F1 minus F2. Make sure my F1 looks okay. Okay, so here's what I'll do. Norm of F1, okay, is that correct? Was the thing 300? Yeah, the other one was 500. So I'm going to do a norm. Just doing checks to see if, oh, wait. I don't know what happened. Norm of F2 and the norm of F3, and I get 201. So let's see what F3 is again. And I mean, I can try it again. 0, 600, and 0 minus F1 minus F2. That's what I get. So you know what I'll do is I'll accept that for a moment, and I'm going to go try to find this, and we'll question this in a moment. So if I want to find those, what I'll do is cosine, arc cosine, degree of, I'll go ahead and do this, F3 over the magnitude of F3, and that's all one statement. Okay, arc cosine degree of F3 over the norm of F3. I'm pretty sure if this is the case that this will be disagreeing as well. 135.45, and so what I get 135.646 for alpha. Beta is equal to 45.782. If you know something, if you've seen something I've done wrong, tell me. Okay, let's see if we've got so 88.20, and so I do not get his answers. Because I don't think I got, no, I only have 88. I don't have 20, and I don't have that. Now, if you want to, we can back this thing out. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's say we can't find our errors. And you're sitting there struggling with this, and you're like, okay, just apparently like I am. So let's say, what is F3? According to him. The back of the book. So according to the back of the book, it's got to be 428 times the cosine in degrees of a vector which has 88.3, comma, 20.6, comma, and 69.5. So I'm just diagnosing things, trying to figure out, did I make the mistake or did he make the mistake? Nope, that's not what I want to do. Now I want to go to MATLAB. So what I want to do is F3, how about BB for back of the book equal to 428 times cosine degrees of 88.3, 20.6, and 69.5. Close, close. And this is what I get. Okay, 12 point. Okay. So he gets, this is what you have to get this. 12 point, okay, I already lost that. 697I plus, where is it in mine? No, 400.633J plus 149.889K. So this is what his vector should look like if it's at the back of the book. That is not, I mean, this is what I got. Okay, sorry. The upper one's what I got. The bottom one is what he got. If he's saying you add F1 and F2 and F3, let's try to make sense of this. Okay, should there be, okay, let me look at his Z component. Look at so he's got this component being 400. I got that component being 140. So I think we're both in agreement that it goes out in this direction. That makes sense because both vectors are leaning out into this other quadrant. Now let's see if there's common sense that can be gathered here. Let's see about the X component. Well, the X component here, so the X component I got from F2 and F1. So F3, so that the resultant of the three forces acts along. I'll have to look back, but I think if you're saying three forces, the resultant of them is in fact in that direction, 600 positive y has a magnitude of 600. I can't see my errors. Can you see it? Now we can kind of fabricate and try to back out and see how you could get that. We could if we, okay, so we got F1 and F2. Let's just look at any particular coordinate. If we got F1 and F2, and then you got some value, okay, let's do it that way. Let's say F3 xi plus F3 yj plus F3 zk. Now just take any particular one of these. This has to be 0. So what does he come up with? He comes up with 149. So he's telling me this is 149. Is he telling me that's positive or negative? He's telling me that's a positive 149. I can't see the difference between those two. If I add those two together, I'm looking at about a 9, not a 149. So I've got to add a 9 to that. So I'm beginning to not buy his answer in the back. Because if I've done this correct, these two plus some other number is to add up to 0. Okay, so this vector F2 points below. This angle is greater than 120, so it points below the XY plane. So it has a negative Z component. That's what the F2 has, a negative Z component. The F1 points above that plane. It has a positive component. And Now, the only other thing I could think is I messed up here, but I've already checked that out. That's already been checked. I'm not buying it. I believe mine over his. So we could do that with the X as well. Okay, let's do it with the X. The Y is, I mean, the Z component's a little easier because I know 1 point's above the X and 1 point's below. For F1, I feel comfortable that that's okay because we got the answer from the fifth. Now, 250, does it make sense that that's 250? Well, that's 60 degrees. Wait a minute. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't think cosine of 60 is, oh, no. I have to eat my words there because cosine of 60 is half. Because if I do cosine degree of 60, that is half. Okay, so yeah. So it is okay. So this is half of that. Okay. So now I'm supposed to add these two numbers plus some third number, and I'm supposed to get 0. So if I add 250 and minus 106 and just throw away digits, let's say if I even just throw away and say it's 100. So I've got to add, throw in another 150 roughly, or, actually, if I'm just going to carry the 6, what is that? 144? Is that right? This is 152, yeah. It's got to be 144 to zero out that other one. And that's not what we get there. But we got that here. I'm not buying his answer. So, sorry. I should have picked a problem that had an answer that was better matched to a solution back both questions. I just don't see it. I don't see how you could do it. Now we could do this. Which 12? There's 12. Oh, that. Well, what you know? So you'd square this. That, well, but then on the wrong side too. If you square that, you won't get 9. I don't know. The other way we could check it this is a weird way to check. If you got time, we might be able to accomplish this in just a few seconds. Let's say I go to the web. What is that thing called? GeoGebra. GeoGebra. Is that right? Okay, so let's say if I could do that, is it geometry? Can I just put, I'm going to put 3 vectors in there. And I'm going to add them together. Come on, man. I wish I had an extra few minutes. Oh my God. Okay. So let's just, there's got to be more. There's one that has a vector. Let's see if I can find it. Lines. Okay, so I don't know. Here, let's just put a vector in. Hey, where's my drawing plane? Okay. What the heck is this? Oh, every time I'm touching it, it's coming up with. But I'm not seeing. Okay, this is not exactly what I expected. Usually I see a coordinate system. Let me try it again. Reload. Where's my coordinate system? There's supposed to be a coordinate system here. Well, that's the other thing I could do. Let's see. Oh, come on. Okay, I'll enter it in a CAD package. So that thing is, for some reason, it's not giving me what I usually see there. So I'm going to put it in a CAD package. I'm going to put the actual vectors in there and see what I end up with. So I'll do it in, I'll do a new one. I'll add a vector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add each vector to itself. So I'll start with a line. I will start with a point. And then I think I do this. A point. No, not that. Is it this one? Point, or it's got to be one that's relative to the last point. So what I'm going to do, okay, so I'm going to do my F1 first. Let's do F1. So I'm going to draw each one of these vectors. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy. I think it's going to require me to do them one at a time. So relative to the last point, we're going to go in here and make a CAD package build. I need to be proven. Okay, there's my first vector. Now let's see if I do. What I should do? Wrong. Keyboard layout is weird here. Okay, so it's looking for the next vector. Okay, so I think if I do that, relative to the last point. Okay. So now I'm going to add F2 to it. It's 250. So I'm adding 250. And then I'm going to add 353.55. And then I'm going to add minus 250. Okay, so there's my next point. My last point is going to be, I'm going to try mine first. If I'm wrong, I'll eat my words. I'm fine with that. Okay, there's my vector. So, copy my vector and 140. And then finally 9.8. Okay, there. And so I should be done. Okay, so now the question is, okay, is it Control W? What the heck? Okay, so this is all in 3D. So let me see if I can draw the vector, the point from the original one. Is it that one? Is that the coordinate? That's the one. And this is the other. I was right. So if you look at that, in the top coordinate, you see 0, 600, 0. So in fact, my answer was correct. So this is F1. That first one's F2. The first F1, F2, and F3. That gives you that. So if you want, you put dimensions on it or draw it again. But if you can hit this will get me to the point 0, 0, 0, to that point, to this point, and then to the final point, which is 600. Well, so I think for myself, I proved that I think my answer was correct. And here's what that. But I could go add his in there and see if maybe he worded the question wrong. So that hopefully doesn't kill off your complete trust of the back of the book. I will tell you that every edition they come out with, they jumble the problems. And I know for a fact that there are times in which they've jumbled the problems and they've moved one and they forgot to move the problem in the back of the book. I'm not saying this is that case, but it can happen. You know, Fluid's book was really bad about that. This book is probably not as bad as some of them are. Sorry about that, but it's not my fault.